Hey everybody, the last video cut me off at the end, so I apologize about that. We're just going to wrap up talking about health education, health awareness strategies. So as I was saying at the end of the last video, teaching strategies and techniques for outside of the classroom may include different community resources, going to different places, field trips, health fairs, things like that. So you can kind of think about like on campus, part of a program may be attending the health fair that's associated on campus. So thinking through some of those health education techniques. And remember, these are more planned type sessions and often on that intrapersonal or interpersonal level. All right, so how to increase learning. So as I mentioned, everyone learns differently. You may be more visual, you may need more tactile, more hands-on learning. So use different senses, seeing, hearing, doing. Make sure that the learner is actively involved, right? It has to be comfortable, make the setting comfortable for the learners. Make sure it's relevant, make sure it makes sense for what you're wanting to accomplish. Repetition, right? Makes things stick. We want it to be pleasant, recognizing progress, encouragement, right? So if someone's making positive changes and positive behaviors, encouraging that, right? Introducing more simple material to more complex. So you can even think through our courses here on campus. We often start with the more simple material that builds upon itself, that becomes more complex. But even learning about health and wellness strategies, we need to start at the beginning, right? And move forward. Applying it to a variety of settings and appropriately pacing it. So not moving too quickly through the material. It has to be to where the individual learner can absorb it, right? Making sure that it's well paced, maybe having one session that's dedicated to just one idea, right? And not throwing too many things at the learner all at once. So let's look at the other strategies. So we've already talked about health communication and health education. So let's look at some of those other strategies. And remember, these they're not independent, so they all kind of work together. Let's talk about behavior modification. So one of the biggest strategies to change behavior is to begin with recording. So logs, journals, diaries, keeping a record of our behaviors and tracking those behaviors is super important. So this has been used in smoking cessation, drug and alcohol addiction, physical activity, right? All of those types of behaviors need to be tracked and kind of analyzed. And that's a great way to kind of start that behavior modification process. So then creating a plan based on that behavior, right? So let's say we're looking at a smoking cessation program. They ask the person from one session to the other, just track how many cigarettes per day you're smoking. So let's say they smoke 12 cigarettes a day. Then asking the individual which of those cigarettes was the most important to you. Was it the one when they first woke up in the morning? What about the one following dinner time or on their drive home from work, right? And assessing that behavior and kind of starting to piece the puzzles together of why they're making these behavior choices, right? So kind of keeping a process log, a record of these behaviors is a great strategy. So let's talk about incentives and disincentives. So they often call this the carrot and the stick. So the carrot is receiving something positive and the stick is taking something away from the participant. So these incentives are anticipated positive or desirable rewards designed to influence the performance of our individual or our groups. So matching our motivation and our incentives. So thinking about our population, what is going to inspire them to change, right? These may be social incentives, material incentives, so actually giving them something, and various incentives. Sometimes you can think about different insurance companies. They'll give you a discount to your insurance premium if you participate in physical education programming, different things like that. So those are incentives. Disincentives discourage behavior, right? This is the flip side of it. So this is an anticipated negative or undesirable consequence designed to influence the behavior or performance of both the individual or group. So this can be intrapersonal if we're thinking about smoking. You can think about a surcharge. So keeping on the theme of insurance companies, some insurance companies will give you a surcharge and increase the premium to your health insurance due to your smoking behaviors. You can also think of this more at a public policy level of cigarette taxes. So this increases the cost of buying cigarettes, right? And that's hopefully going to give you a disincentive to purchasing cigarettes. Okay, so let's talk about just a few other strategies. Social support activities. These provide support and kind of give you a willing partner in these behavior changes. It's easier to participate in changing behaviors if you have support systems, right? If you have someone that's kind of holding you accountable and cheering you on, listening to when you've had a hard time, right? So some really kind of common support groups that you'll hear about in relation to healthy habits would be like Weight Watchers, right? They have group meetings. They talk about their challenges, their successes. So this is a great example. Overeaters Anonymous. You can also think about Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. And these have like buddy systems in them. Especially AA, they have, they call them sponsors. And they hold each other accountable and they talk about their challenges and accomplishments. They can even be used with different contests. So maybe making it a step challenge. How many steps can they get in a day, right? Having a contract for walking groups, for instance. Social gathering, it gives you that social aspect to it. Even social networks. So now, a lot of things are happening virtually, but having that web of social relationships can even be like Facebook. I'll give you guys an example. It's not a program, but I'm a part of a social support network for mothers of children with visual difficulties, visual problems. My son was diagnosed with a visual difficulty and had to start wearing glasses and start wearing an eye patch and have eye drops. I've never had to wear glasses a day in my life, so this was something new and I needed that support system. Although it's not changing behavior, there were new things that I had to learn about visual acuity and visual problems. So just, something that helped me, but this also relates to those interventions that we're talking about. Okay, so let's talk about some of those other strategies. As I mentioned, we've already talked about health communication, health education, and other strategies. Now we're going to talk about those community organizational strategies. Some of these include different services, tests, treatments, and these are all to improve our health and our health care. So examples can include health risk assessments, so actually delivering a questionnaire that gives us a look into those behaviors that are putting us at risk. Biometric screenings, this is a great one, and so many work sites are doing biometric screenings now, and it's amazing. They're looking at their workers' blood pressure, their cholesterol levels, their blood sugar levels, and using that as a screening tool to help improve the health of their workers. Flu shots, having flu shots available. So many places now are offering flu shots on site at larger companies. You can even think about here on campus, they have during their health fair, they have flu shots that the nursing students, I believe, are the ones giving these. So it's so nice when it's being delivered to you, right? Other immunizations, different checkups, different exams. These are those community based interventions that will help be delivered through your programs. So these reduce barriers, or we need to think about the barriers. We need to think about the services being provided and how we can make these affordable and accessible to our population, right? So another example here that you'll see that link is a health fair, right? So giving it to the community, making sure there aren't any barriers, making it accessible to our community members. Okay, health policy and enforcement strategies. Now we're talking about the policy side of things. So these include executive orders, laws, ordinances, policies, position statements, regulations, formal and informal rules, right? Can you think of a mandate that was put into place recently for our community? What about wearing masks anytime you're out in public? This is a health policy, right? Or an executive order. It was kind of made by the city, right? Because every city was a little bit different, or depending on the state, right? But these are things that are put into place to help with our health behaviors and to improve or reduce the risk. So for us, that's reducing the risk of us to contract COVID. But these are mandated or regulated activities. So, for example, state laws to raise cigarette taxes. Sometimes they can be controversial, right? They can be political. They can take away some of our freedoms, pride, money, etc., or they feel that way. An example would be seatbelt laws, right? Perhaps back then when seatbelt laws were being put into place, people felt like they were having their freedom taken away from them to an extent. But overall, it was for the common good to protect the health of our population and our public, right? So wearing a seatbelt there's evidence that it's going to help reduce the risk of injury if there's an automobile accident, right? So it's for that common good, just like wearing a mask for our community, right? We're protecting ourselves and others. It's the common good, although is it always our choice? Is it our freedom? If you don't want to wear a mask, you can't go into those places, right? So it's those policy things changing those behaviors. Let's talk about environmental changes. So these are opportunities, supports, and cues that are placed in our environment that help influence or change behaviors, right? This is our built environment or our physical environment. These are things that are around us, right? You can think about like community gardens. I live in Midtown and we have Overton Park close by. And I love that recently they've had those scooters and those bikes, those bike rental areas added. This is things that are in our community and in our environment that are going to help us, allow us to become more physically active. Sorry guys, stumbling over my words here. And some call these strategies like health engineering, things that are put into our environment to help change. Some other things also in that built environment that I've noticed recently, and if you drive down Union, some of the newer buildings are being placed right along the sidewalk, and not putting a parking lot next to the sidewalk first. They're actually putting the building next to this, and it is increasing, or it's trying to influence individuals to walk to different places. If you have the parking lot in the front next to the sidewalk, it's more likely that you'll drive and park your car. They've found that the built environment, if you have the building next to the sidewalk, that it induces or influences individuals to walk from place to place, because it is felt that you are the closest to those buildings and allows you to increase that physical activity and walk in your environment. All right. Continuing on with health policies, different environmental policies. One is like littering laws, right? That's an environmental policy. Littering penalties, actually giving you a financial penalty to littering. Safety policies, smoke-free environments, right? So many workplaces now have tobacco use policies or smoke-free policies for their environments. Some other ones may include we just talked about the first one, but policies requiring healthy foods in their meetings and vending machines. We have that policy here on campus, right? Any meeting that's held that the university provides food for, it has to follow these certain guidelines that the food being delivered is healthy. Policies that allow for flex time for you to be able to incorporate exercise into your day. Policies that impact employees may be flexible scheduling, work hours, different leave time, right? Some of these things help influence our health and our behaviors. So we're going to stop here and we will pick up what do strategies look like in that program plan and give you some actual concrete examples for different units and sessions and such.